for further consideration because it's interesting. I mentioned that after seeing and hearing through the sense doors, there is thinking which is either kusala or akusala. And you said that I think you thought that there could also be neutral thinking. And I said not so. And you said, ask me why it can only be kusala or akusala, to which I didn't have an answer. So perhaps we can see who else wants to.
Say it again, please.
Yes. The thinking that follows experiences through the sense doors must be either kusala or akusala in the Javana Jittas.
Not for arahata.
Sorry?
Not for an arahata. So if we include...
Yeah, right. We did discuss the case of the arahata, but for the ordinary being, yes. It cannot be neutral, so...
And what do you mean by neutral? Feeling or reality or what? Neutral.
When we discuss mainly feeling first, right? I'm making an example. We were in the car and saw traffic, so I don't have preference of those. But it's just objects hitting the idols, and my mind arises recognize all the objects outside, right? So that's all. I don't have feeling of I like this, I don't like that. That's why I raised the question, why has it should be
So the if there's no, at those times, if there's no kindness or no generosity or no understanding, no wholesomeness of any kind, then it's unwholesome. So most of the day, most of the time, it's unwholesome. From as soon as we wake up in the morning until we go to sleep, most of the day, it's unwholesome. And ignorance is there most of the time, because ignorance arises whenever there's attachment or whenever there's aversion, or even without attachment and aversion, just not knowing.
The thing to mention is that there can be subtle attachment or subtle aversion that we're not doesn't register as either. So we think it's neutral, but in fact it's subtle version of attachment or aversion.
I think the logic I understand. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I'm thinking maybe there's, I don't know what's the details of the conversation, but maybe there's also discussion about objects of seeing being either pleasant or unpleasant, whether that was the issue at some point. Because the objects of seeing, as we know, is never neutral. It's pleasant or unpleasant. There's no such thing as neutral there. And then following it is kusala or akusala chitta. And we're talking here about the akusala chitta being basically three types: attachment, aversion, and ignorance. So these three are associated with different feelings. When it's ignorance, it can be with neutral feelings. Even with attachment, it can be with neutral feelings. And when there's ignorance, we don't know what it is.
So there's a difference between wholesome and unwholesome and pleasant and unpleasant feeling, of course. Yeah, that's the point.
And then there is the feeling. So pleasant feeling can arise with attachment, or pleasant feeling can arise with kusala. So we cannot judge by the feeling. Unpleasant feeling, of course, only arises with unwholesome, with dosa. Like if we feel sorry for the animal that's suffering and there's unpleasant feeling, of course it's unwholesome at those moments. But then neutral feeling, when it seems that there's no pleasant feeling, neutral feeling can also arise with attachment or with ignorance. So when it just seems that one doesn't feel pleasant or unpleasant feeling, there's neutral feeling. It can just be with ignorance too. So what we find is the more understanding is developed, the more of what is usually taken for being wholesomeness is actually unwholesome. So more and more unwholesomeness is known. Most of the day, it's unwholesome chittas arising.
And one other point we discussed, and which came up again this morning, I think, was the hypothetical first moment of, say, generosity or awareness. You know what I'm talking about? Yes. So what I haven't quite followed from your question is, what is the significance of this this situation that you raise, and you wanted to put forward a hypothetical first moment?
Just a quick recap.
We're talking one of the examples, right, we use is the monks who already have awareness and then they practice, right? But my question arises, then Jonathan suggested, if in past experience, past karma, if one hasn't accumulated any of those understanding, then this particular person won't be able to understand any of this, won't be able to acquire any knowledge. I was wondering, if that is the case, what happened then for the very beginning? How would one acquire any knowledge if that's not possible to acquire new one?
I find
roughly, someone, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, I understand the question. The thing is, I'm reminded about the sutta where this trader gets shot binary, and he wants answers. So I think the message is that it's just a wrong way to think about things, because there's dukkha now, and it can be understood in terms of the conditions now, and that's the important thing. And like I was trying to say this morning, we can understand that if attachment rises now, that there was attachment accumulated, that this has arisen because of attachment in the past. If there's understanding, it has arisen in the past. I think there's no point trying to figure when the first the attachment, the wisdom. I don't think it's useful.
Fully agree, but the question in my mind is, how could I acquire new knowledge at all if I don't have understanding?
Don't mind about
not tracing back at all.
Don't mind about that. Just listen and talk, and then one can see whether there can be understanding. Listen carefully, can condition right understanding instead of thinking about the past or the accumulation, right? Because it's beyond thinking. But now each word can be considered carefully in order to really understanding it. For example, awareness. What is it? We talk about awareness loosely. It seems like one understands it clearly, but actually, it's that awareness that it is awareness, which is kusala. So what is awareness? You talk about the person who has a lot of great awareness, right? But if there is no understanding of awareness, how can we know that that person has great awareness if there is no understanding of awareness? So first of all, what is awareness? So we can say who has awareness or who has no awareness at all. If there is no understanding of awareness, there cannot be understanding of people who have awareness and people who do not have awareness.
What is awareness?
What is awareness?
How do you know that anyone or someone has great awareness?
How do I know
Yes.
what someone have great awareness?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be able to know if somebody else. The mind itself can only observe at this particular moment. So.
And what? Because we discussed it yesterday. So, what is awareness, as you understand it?
Or from the very beginning, is there awareness? Is there a reality which is awareness? Or is it only word about it?
It can be words, but I think awareness is when your mind.
The nature of awareness, the characteristic of awareness, when it's real, it has its own characteristic which is different from other realities. There are so many realities, and one is awareness. So what is it which is different from the others? In Pali, it is sati, right? So what is it?
I was thinking when you say so many, and then
what was the difference? I'm trying to think, but let me say what my understanding is. When there is For example, just seeing, right? Okay, seeing. And then you're aware. The mind itself recognize this object, and that's what you're aware of. So that is one of the awareness. Right?
Is it like concentration?
You can have concentration, but without awareness, right? Because if you're doing something that you're familiar and you concentrate on doing that, you.
So you mean awareness is different from concentration? Awareness is not concentration. So at this moment, is there concentration or awareness?
Both, because I concentrate and aware at the same time, right? I'm concentrating, meaning I am focusing on what you're saying and try to understand the words from my past memories or knowledge, understanding, whatever. At the same time, aware my body and then seeing the objects and the sensations, that the temperature, hardness on the floor, the sound, other sounds. So that is awareness to me as well.
Is there concentration all the time?
Definitely no, yes.
Is there awareness all the time?
No, it's not continuous.
So what is the nature of concentration, of reality, which is concentration? What is it? A reality, right? Concentration is a reality. It's real, isn't it?
Let me help a bit. So concentration, the mental factor, the cetasika, it arises with every single citta during life. It's one of the universal cetasikas. That means it arises at every moment, and it focuses on the object that citta experiences. If it doesn't focus on that object, citta cannot experience the object. So at a moment of seeing, there is concentration which focuses on visible object so that seeing can experience the visible object. At a moment of kusala, concentration focuses on the object of that kusala citta. At a moment of akusala, it focuses on the object of akusala citta. So concentration arises at every moment. It can be kusala, it can be akusala, it can be vipaka, the result of karma, at moments of seeing or hearing, or it can be kiriya, that means not kusala, not akusala, and not vipaka. But sati, or awareness, only arises with wholesome, or we can say beautiful, cittas, because also with some result cittas, and is aware of that object. So when we, like yesterday, we talked about how people have an idea of being aware when lifting the cup or moving it slowly or writing a letter. This has nothing to do with sati, awareness, because it has to arise with kusala cittas. So at a moment of when the thief is taking the objects that doesn't belong to him, and there's a lot of concentration, but no sati, because no kusala cittas arising at that time. Even now we're having a discussion, we're not thinking about trying to be aware, but when there are wholesome cittas at moments of understanding, sati is there, it is aware. And when we're talking about understanding, we're talking about sati, which begins to be aware of the reality at this moment, even if it's just at an intellectual level in the beginning. And it's this sati which develops with understanding until it is directly aware of the reality that is experienced. So these different realities, it's very precise when they arise. So sati can only arise with wholesome cittas, or results of wholesome cittas, or kiriya cittas. But concentration arises at every moment in life, whether now or chopping vegetables or eating lunch or going to the bathroom, moments of seeing, hearing, thinking, liking, disliking, concentration is there. So if someone has the idea of becoming more concentrated, it's bound to be unwholesome concentration with attachment.
And apart from the mental factors of concentration and awareness, which Sarah has just been describing, there are conventional ideas of these terms. Conventional concentration is something that we would say requires some effort. Conventional awareness means knowing what we're doing, that kind of thing, right? And that was the kind of awareness you were describing earlier. Yeah, right. So, like knowing what is being seen now, or paying close attention to the meaning of what has been. These would be conventional ideas of concentration and awareness. In the Buddha's teaching, they referred to, these terms referred to specific mental factors which have particular functions. And so one of Ajahns how can it be known whether of I know what I'm doing at the moment, which is conventional awareness, that could never lead to enlightenment. Because there's nothing outstanding.
About the importance along the way of the difference between moments, this particular practice, in order to have, it's very difficult to understand that prior to understanding, there must be a lot of intellectual understanding about everything, not just sati.
Yes, that was my question in the Thai session in the foundation, to know what sati is. It's still one object.
Situation. So this is why there has to be understanding of what is real at this moment. And as soon as there's an idea of trying to know it, or as understanding develops, there is wise considering about all kinds of realities about awareness, but not trying to consider, is this sati or not sati, or when is sati? Attachment can come in very easily, the trap again.
Yeah, I think it's a wish to know at once development.
And that doesn't come to understand sati, because it's never about understanding, it's about having it. People
only visible object appears at that moment, but usually to ignorance, standing and awareness. So nothing is changed, nothing is got rid of. Life isn't any different from usual. It's not any more scary. It's just exactly as it is.
I think the most basic
concepts are not to be got rid of. Realities to be understood and not to be confused.
At the moment.
Sorry, I didn't have the mic.
At the moment of awareness, there's no concept. So it's got rid of in the sense that when there is awareness of a reality, there's no concept at that moment. There's no
I don't think that's the correct approach. There's no getting rid of anything, because at the moment of seeing, there's no concept either. But would you say it's getting rid of concept?
No, getting rid of at that moment. But we always have the idea of the table, the chair, I. But at the moment of awareness, that is not there. It's just a characteristic of a reality. So in that sense...
What about at this moment when there's a moment of intellectual right understanding about the concept of visible object? At that moment there is awareness, but the object is concept of the reality.
Yes. So the intellectual understanding doesn't get rid of the concept, but awareness itself, it doesn't change anything, because obviously there's still the thinking, but afterwards. But it's just that at that moment, there's just that characteristic of reality. It's not something.
It depends whether, because as we said, sati arises with each sobanachita, so it depends on what kind of sati and what level of sati. If we're talking about satipatthana, then the object is reality. But if we're talking about pariyatti understanding, or understanding which is not yet direct understanding of reality, then the object is concept of reality.
But what is to be got rid of are not concepts, but the wrong idea of concepts. And wrong idea is a reality, wrong view. So awareness can help to overcome wrong view. Awareness accompanied by understanding can help that.
No, I think what you're making the distinction is that at the moment right understanding, it's a reality. With at the moment of satipatthana, it's a reality, a characteristic of a reality which is the object, not an idea, not a concept. I think that's what you're saying. But your question earlier about, I think it was about awareness, and okay, anyway, I was thinking about the importance of the approach to it is that I think it's to emphasize understanding. Once you emphasize understanding, you know that understanding understands the characteristic of a reality, nama or rupa, then you know that the associated mental factors, which include sati, will also have the same reality as object. So I think that's the beginning. So from there we can understand that when it's a concept, that's not satipatthana.
Correct. So that means that it gets rid of taking the concept for something real, like the spoon.
Just the way to say, simply as there's no concept at that moment. When you say getting rid.
Yeah, at the moment of awareness, right awareness.
No concept.
There's no concept. It's at that level. But so we're talking at quite a high level here. But this has to be known for it to be developed. We have to know the difference between when there is awareness and when there is no awareness to be able to move forwards, to develop. And at the moment of awareness, we can say that the reality is a little bit clearer than before. It is turning towards the reality and not the idea of something. Because at the end, with the perfect understanding, there are just realities.
So what about just talking about understanding now at this moment? So, because otherwise it's always about what's at the end. What about now? So now visible object is seen, it's real. There can be understanding, there can be awareness of visible object, and as it develops, it becomes firmer and firmer, and the object appears more and more clearly to understanding, so that it's until it is just that reality which is known. But we don't have to think about, well, what will happen when it's vipassana jnana or one is enlightened. But what about just understanding now, developing awareness now of what appears, which is the reality?
And you said at the end there, just reality. What did you mean by at the end?
When there's the perfect understanding, the wrong view is got rid of, and so that life is realities arising and falling away in a split second, either nama, the reality which experiences, or rupa. There's not some permanent person with arms and legs who walks in a place. That's the wrong view of reality.
So that's not, there are still concepts.
There's still concepts, yeah. It's just that it gets rid of concepts at that tiny little moment. There's no thinking. So when there is awareness, at that moment, the reality is the object. Immediately afterwards, there's the idea of the spoon. That will always happen, yes. Or not necessarily happen, but it.
Well, what about now? Like at a moment of seeing, just visible object. If there's understanding, it is understanding of visible object, and thinking of tables and spoons and cups as usual, with or without any understanding. So it's just like ordinary life. Otherwise, it seems like life is somehow different, but it's just like now. But understanding and awareness develop to understand the nature of life, the nature of reality more and more clearly and firmly, until there's no misunderstanding.
But we have to understand the characteristic of awareness when it arises. We have to know the difference between awareness and no awareness.
Like any reality now, when it appears, if it appears, because otherwise if there's trying so hard to know awareness and trying to pinpoint when there's awareness and unawareness, then it's just like trying to pinpoint breath or anything else. It's self at work again. It's wrong practice, or it's like trying to be aware of visible object. So we know that when people go off to the meditation center, it's wrong practice conditioned by wrong understanding. But even now, if it's trying to understand now whether there's awareness or not awareness and exactly what visible object is, it's not the natural understanding of what appears without any expectation and without any selection at all. So the reason we hear about different kinds of realities is because the wise considering conditions the development of understanding and awareness now in daily life, but without trying to have it, or without expecting it, or without thinking this one must be the object of understanding or awareness.
But
otherwise it's just more attachment all the time.
Yes, but still we have to know. And the original question was, what is awareness? So we need to know what is meant by that term precisely in order to know who is being aware, who isn't being aware, but also how to develop it. So that it's, what do we mean by that term? What do we mean by seeing? We learn very precisely intellectually that it's a reality which experiences. So it seems to me that we do need to know the precise understanding, intellectual, of what is meant by awareness.
Well, it has a reality as object.
Yes.
Is the point.
Yes.
That's not... when you go on to say you got rid of concept,
well,
that
because
seems to be a totally different...
well, because there's no concept at that point, at that moment.
I know, but...
so therefore, at that moment in life...
Well, you've said that the reality, the object is a reality.
Well, no, I think... Oh, yes. It sounds like we get rid of people and things, which we don't, because we still think about those things. It was just a manner of expression. But at that moment, there's no concept.
Is it a useful kind of thing to say when you've said that the object is a reality? Why do you go on to say
it gets rid of concepts? Because we live in a world of concepts all the time. We live in an ocean of concepts. Until there is that moment of awareness when there is just a reality, so there's no concept. So yes, I take your point, my expression is perhaps a bit over the top, but actually at that moment there is a reality and no concept. Afterwards we can think, and there may be awareness of thinking to say that's a type of reality as well. There's no thing in that thinking. But that's what I said, that there's no concept at that moment.
Are you trying to say that otherwise it's just like a blank and moments of awareness, and that is different from the rest?
That's it, the phone notification. It's ping, yes. The moment of awareness is ping, reality, then gone, then back in the world of concepts. So this ping is what we have to understand. When is there a ping?
Well, I don't know if we have to understand that from that, because in the end it's just what appears that can be understood, and there's no choosing which reality. And logically,
that would be like, if I could just interrupt, describing seeing by saying no hearing. The moment of seeing gets rid of hearing. Well, it's just not a relevant consideration. Only seeing.
At the moment of seeing, there's no hearing, so that has to be understood.
Okay,
I think that it's just a way to explain the different moments between awareness and unawareness. That's all. But if there is no understanding of awareness, we might take something as awareness. Like, now I'm aware, but actually it's not awareness. That's why there should be the understanding of awareness as it is.
Right. Yes. But in terms of understanding it directly, first there has to be awareness.
There must be the intellectual understanding, like what moment is moment of awareness, at what level. Because awareness is a reality, mental factor, which arises with all wholesome jittas. Without this, the jitta cannot be wholesome, and without other wholesome jittasikas, the wholesome jitta cannot arise at all. But different from other jitasikas. So we can see the difference between samadhi, concentration, and awareness. Otherwise, without the understanding of awareness, which is different from concentration, one will take concentration for awareness, or think that I at all.
Acharya, I was just thinking earlier that the question about whether or not there's awareness is only when we want to have awareness. If just developing understanding, then we don't mind because we just keep hearing and developing understanding.
That's because of the understanding of awareness is so clear that no one can do anything at all. So as much as we can know in daily life, its moments which are wholesome must be awareness. Even right now, at moment of understanding, there is awareness with other many cetasikas arising. Who knows? So we are talking about realities which arise and fall away in split seconds all the time, but nobody, no one knows until right understanding begins to hear about it and develop the understanding that there is no one, no matter at what time, they are only realities. Citta, cetasikas, and rupa, which is always forgotten all the time, even right now. So in order to understand each reality as it is, like awareness and concentration, we should talk more about the difference between awareness and concentration, so that we will not take concentration for awareness.
I also remember Achan usually say that we don't need to say a lot about awareness because it's not the reality that appears. It is there at any moment of understanding, but because it doesn't appear, then it cannot be object of understanding. There's one thing like that. I have a question because we know that we need to study each word at a time and deeply each word. And at the same time, sometimes we also inclined to pinpoint about realities. So what is the borderline between the two?
Sorry,
between
The borderline.
Yeah. The borderline between studying each word, the meaning of each word, and deeply, and pinpointing it.
Or developing understanding, you mean? From hearing to the moment when it is a direct understanding. So we can understand that awareness is aware, usually of the object of kusala, of dana or sila, while there's no thinking about it at all in the day. But at moment of kusala, it is awareness which is aware of that level of kusala. But when we talk about satipatthana, it's different because it has to be the understanding of reality as foundation for its arising only. Because without understanding that there is no one at all, if there is no such understanding, there cannot be moment of awareness at all. Because awareness, when we talk about the level of patipatti, not just intellectual, it means the moment when it arises and is aware of the characteristic of a reality. So one has to understand the reality, not people and things, but the reality of our reality, which we have no expectation which one will be object of right awareness because it hasn't risen yet. So just having more understanding about realities, no expectation, it can be conditioned for direct awareness to arise. By then, the characteristic of awareness appear because one learned from hearing and having more confidence on right awareness or satipatthana that it is aware of a reality with understanding which one has heard before. So understanding there understands that characteristic as no self. So there must be moment of understanding awareness that it is different from moment without awareness, because the object appears well and well hears, and well here doesn't mean that it appears well right now because it's hard, but no understanding, no awareness. Hardness appear as it is, whatever, whenever, but at moment of direct awareness arises, it understands the characteristic as no self, only the element which is hard, with right understanding that it is right awareness at that moment. So the object appears well. Like now, hardness appears but not well, with our understanding. So the meaning of appearing well means that with understanding and the characteristic of awareness appear, so the objects appear well to direct awareness and understanding. Even just very short moment, but it's there, accumulated on and on and on, until it can condition moment of better understanding. And right understanding knows the difference between moments when there is more understanding and less attachment.
Your question, I got it the second time about what you call the borderline between studying and pinpointing. So at this moment, when one's considering wisely about different realities in daily life that have to be known, like samadhi and sati, seeing, hearing. These are the realities that need to be considered wisely. But when there is trying to pinpoint, like, oh, is there sati now, or is this not sati, or trying to work out whether it is visible object and how light it is at this moment, then it's attachment at that moment of pinpointing. So actually it's not a matter of there's some sort of borderline, either it's kusala citta or akusala citta. So they may be reflecting about visible object now as the reality which is seen with kusala citta or akusala citta with attachment.
So the difference is between understanding and attachment.
Between, yes, understanding, reflecting wisely or reflecting unwisely, like if one's just repeating the terms or the labels or the Pali or just what one's heard but without any understanding, or trying to get it, trying to be aware, then it's akusala.
So if the question now about whether any object appears well now? No. Because it appears, hardness, visible object, sound, everything, but not as well as when there is understanding with direct awareness.
And the point, sorry, just one. The point is it has to develop gradually, as Nina kept stressing. So it's not a matter of there being no understanding of reality and then suddenly vipassana jnana understanding when everything is clear for an instant and then concepts as usual. Understanding develops gradually, awareness develops gradually.
And naturally too.
So Achan, you're saying appearing well is the function of sati?
And panya together.
I have a question about the something nothing, because like you were saying, or as the texts say, let's say the sutras talk about how when seeing arises, it arises by conditions. Before that there was no seeing, and after that seeing there is no seeing. So from nothing there is something that's seeing, and then nothing. The other day you were referring to how any reality now which appears actually is also nothing, because it's so insubstantial and impermanent, like a bubble, and gone immediately. So then it's like from nothing, there's nothing to nothing.
Yeah,
it's
can panya understand that directly?
Only
when it's vipassana jnana.
Yeah, when it's when the impermanence of reality is understood, I think.
But from hearing and having more confidence that actually there's nothing to be object of clinging as usual, because nothing all the time. Something only when it appears and then nothing again. So actually the world is nothing.
Can one say that what the meaning of that is, that actually each conditioned reality is so insubstantial or inconsequential, of no importance whatsoever, because it's so impermanent?
Until panya sees that.
But that's the meaning.
Because we hear a lot, but it's not yet that degree.
Because before, when, for example, we've discussed the sutta about Ritika or about the meaning of nothing, and you've mentioned that in comparison to Nibbana, each conditioned reality is nothing, but who except an enlightened one can see that compared to Nibbana it's nothing. But now you're suggesting even when it's direct understanding at the level of vipassana jnana, it's clear that it's nothing, of no consequence at all.
So panya develops on and on to be the moment of enlightenment. The Four Noble Truths, not just the first truth.
And nothing here does not mean no reality. It just means reality has the characteristic of being nothing.
Reality has the characteristic of being so impermanent and of no consequence at all, because it's gone instantly. And it's not anyone or anything and gone immediately.
No, because some people like to think that nothing, as in Ritaka, means there's no reality.
So to recap, the path begins with detachment, and then as understanding develops, that also conditions detachment, because the more that reality is understood as being inconsequential or boring, that conditions detachment in itself, and then it ends in no attachment. That's the sort of summary of attachment.
You say boring. You
Ajahn Sachin mentioned it a couple of days ago that seeing arises by conditions falls away, then hearing arises by conditions falling away. So I guess it's like it's unsatisfactory, and that's in the suttas as well. I guess it's being a bit like in a movie, where if you go to a movie for an hour and a half, it's quite interesting, but actually if you go to a movie from breakfast until you go to bed, it actually might get a bit boring. So that's my
But
analogy.
boring seemed to be another reality.
Well, it's not satisfactory.
With panya or with attachment?
It's not satisfactory with a panya.
So it can bring joy and pleasant moment, happy feeling to know the truth, better than not knowing at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's what Ajahn often says in Thai. Rather to be courageous and with cheerfulness when knowing the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Usually if one talks about being bored, it's with dosa usually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kunila, did you say that? I know the meaning of courageous, but did you say it's joyous?
Cheerfulness.
Cheerfulness. Cheerfulness
Yeah.
with
And courage.
Courageousness.
Yes, to know the truth.
Better
Better than
That.
to understand the
That's in
truth
the
that this is the absolute truth.
cheerfulness too.
To know.
Yes.
To know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really.
Oh.
Yes.
Cheerful.
Yes.
To go on.
Yeah, courageous.
Yeah.
Cheerful too.
Ajahn, that seems like to refer to many associated cetasikas, confidence being one of them, cheerfulness and pleasant feeling and detachment. I mean, what is cheerfulness? Why would there be cheerfulness?
Not with attachment.
Yeah.
Not with attachment.
With the panya.
Yeah.
Because panya can arise with happy feeling.
But panya just knows. So what cetasika is functioning as cheerfulness?
Piti.
Piti.
Excuse me?
Piti, joy.
Yeah, piti. Yeah.
Wholesome joy. Yeah, usually when we say cheerfulness, it sounds like lopa, but wholesome joy, piti.
Yeah.
Little by little.
You look so happy.
Courageous. I don't understand. But I didn't know that it's associated with the meaning of cheerfulness.
Cheerfulness can be the object of lopa.
For us, usually it's loba, you know.
Yeah. I know it's
To be courageous to understand lopa and all other realities as no self.
Now that you're awake, let's, or being cheerful, let's mention a little bit more about, we were chatting about khandha and upadana khandha, and about how each rupa in life is rupa khandha, but it's only upadana khandha when it is the object of clinging, and no matter it's the rupa of the table, the rupa of the body, the rupa of the Buddha's body, at the moment of it is clung to by anyone's cheaters, then at that moment it's Upadana Kanda. And Tadao had a question about how each reality, each conditioned rupa, each conditioned sanya and so on is kanda because of the English translation of aggregate. And we were talking about how any rupa, far, near, past, future, each one is rupa kanda, and that is the meaning of the word kanda, because each one arises and falls away. It's saying something, nothing, something doesn't last for an instant, and that's the meaning of kanda. Is there anything else about that you were surprised about?
No, one thing I'd like to ask about Upadana Kanda, yeah? As Sarah mentioned that, for instance, yeah, one single rupa, yeah, when single rupa becomes object of clinging, yeah, then that particular rupa can be called Rupupada Kanda or not.
Why we call that Rupupada Kanda? Why? Because there is clinging of that object.
But
right then.
Kanda means aggregates.
Kanda is whatever arises and falls away. No matter nama and rupa, all conditioned realities are khandas.
Yeah.
But we classify them by way of 5 khandas, by way of clinging, because there is clinging very much to the rupa thana khanda, to vedana, to sanya, to sankhara khanda, and vijnana khanda, means all khandas are objects of
just
clinging.
take an example of a single rupa arising and falling away of one rupa, yeah? And when it becomes an object of a clinging, yeah? Then
Because
it's
of
called
ignorance.
Clinging object of Upadana Kanda.
Like who sees?
But I have sort of naive idea that when there is a arising and falling away of, say, rupa, yeah, and it becomes an object of our clinging, at that moment there has to be other 4 khandas, chitta and vedana and sanya.
Right.
And
so
I thought that whole thing would be called
each one is object of clinging.
One at a time. Only one at a time.
Because attachment can only cling to one object at a time. So it cannot cling to all the khandas, sanya.
So one at a time, one at a time. And then eventually it becomes just a group of clinging. Oh, I see. Okay, thank you very much.
Achan, can you explain what the Tao is referring to? One at a time, and becoming a group?
It means that there is clinging to everything in life, to all 5 khandas, all kinds of reality.
Do you understand what khandas are, Helena and Ian? Do you know what khandas? So this is a way of classifying realities. So in this way, when we talk about khandas, we're referring to all the conditioned realities which arise and fall away. So each rupa, each visible object, each sound, each taste is rupa khanda. It means rupa which arises and falls away. So we can talk about the collection of rupas because each one is rupa khanda and each one can be the object of clinging. And each feeling, you were talking about pleasant feeling, no matter what kind of feeling it is vedana khanda, and each feeling can be the object of clinging. And usually in a day we find the rupas, the sense objects experience very important, and the feelings, we mind a lot about the feeling, we love pleasant feeling, we try so hard to avoid unpleasant feeling. So a lot of importance is given to feelings. And the third group is sanya kanda. Sanya is memory. At each moment in life there is memory, remembering and marking the object experienced. Without memory, then there cannot be any thinking about what's seen and heard. There cannot be any understanding of realities at all developed. So each memory is sanya kanda, and each memory can be an object of clinging to. And the fourth one refers to all the other mental factors: concentration, awareness, attachment, all these mental factors we've been discussing. Each one is sankhara kanda. Each one arises and falls away. Each one can be the object of clinging. And finally, vijnana kanda refers to each citta, each moment of consciousness.
Five khandas. It's not khanda of clinging. It's pure five khandas.
It can each reality can still be upadana kanda because for example, even though the rupa of the arahat, for the arahat himself, his cittas no more clinging, but it can be clinging for the others around, like the rupas of the Buddha's body, object of clinging for others. So each rupa, his pleasant feeling with great piti can be object of clinging for others. So even that great piti is upadana kanda.
Oh.
Any reality at all except lokuttara dhammas can be upadana kanda.
The classification into five khandas, distinguishing between sanya, vedana, and sankhara. Does this also point to the fact that sanya and vedana are not sankhara khandas?
Mm-hmm.
So the significance of khandas is not just that they are just realities that rise and fall away, but they're different also, each one.
So sanya and vedana are sankhara, but not sankhara kanda, because they have their own kanda.
But they're not sankhara kanda.
Right, because
not just because they have their own, but because they're not accumulative. That's what I understand.
What do you mean they're not
accumulative in nature, like other cetasikas accumulate in intensity. For example, metta accumulates. It's not the case same with sanya and vedana. They don't have that nature to accumulate.
Are you saying that sanya or vedana that arises with kusala and akusala citas doesn't accumulate, the pleasant feeling doesn't accumulate, the pleasant feeling with lobha that it doesn't accumulate?
That's what I understand.
You mean in intensity?
In intensity.
Because obviously sanya does, this
Just
character
marks.
does accumulate, and that's...
No, just marks. Just marks. Each moment it just performs a function of marking. There's no such thing that there's a tendency to mark better or worse, or, you know. Same with Vedana, it's just a feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, that arises with each chitta. Whereas the other cetasikas, lopa, when it arises, it is increased the tendency to lopa, metta, the tendency to... Yeah, that's also another one.
What about when there's pleasant, when eating whatever you like, mango or chocolate cake, and the pleasant feeling, doesn't it get stronger and stronger each time you eat that chocolate cake? Doesn't it accumulate? So that if that pleasant feeling of lobha is strong enough, one goes to take some cake that doesn't belong to one or something. So that pleasant feeling is different degrees?
I'm not sure. I mean, I would say that lopa accumulates and it arises more often, but I'm not sure.
So sanya and vedana, all mental factors that arise, when they arise with kusala and akusala citas, they accumulate.
So what accumulates?
What accumulates is tendencies.
Kusala and akusala. That's why it includes the other cetasikas as well as sankhara khanda, because without those cetasika, there cannot be kusala and akusala.
So moments of kusala and akusala, the citta and all the mental factors accumulate. But the Vedana and Sanya, there's such significance, so much importance is given to them.
What is the object of clinging right now?
For each person, a different reality. It can
Rupa khanda, right? Vedana khanda, sanya khanda, sankhara khanda, vijnana khanda, all of them.
We also discussed a point, but I'm trying to find a way to make it fairly simple, about bhavanga citas. So during life, when there are no sense door processes or mind door processes, like in deep sleep, there are still citas, there are still life continuum citas, and these we call bhavanga citas. And even now, in between sense door and mind door processes, there are bhavanga citas. So the very first moment of life actually is a kind of bhavanga citta, the birth consciousness. And throughout life, bhavanga citas during the day, during the night. And Tadao had a question. Well, first of all, we were pointing out and discussing how every bhavanga citta during life is exactly the same, has the same nature, and experiences the same object, which is completely unknown and of no significance. And then I think you were asking about the bhavanga cittas before the mind door process or in between the processes. Would you like to?
No, I'm thinking about bhavanga citta here in terms of accumulation. When we say, usually it's accumulation of kusala and akusala, yeah? And in the case of Viti Chittas, well, it's very clear that these Ksala and Aksala would be accumulated, yeah? But how about Viti Mutta Chitta? Because of Bhavanga Chitta is Viti Mutta Chitta, yeah? Which takes place between all these Viti Chittas, yeah? Are they qualitatively the same or not? Say, the first moment of, the second, okay, first Bhavanga Chitta in this life, and the last Bhavanga Chitta in this life, yeah, which take place before the Chitta Chitta, yeah, are they qualitatively same or not in terms of accumulation of Ksala and Aksala?
They are result Chittas, Vipaka Chittas.
Yeah.
So Vipaka Chittas don't accumulate.
Yeah.
So each one, each Bhavanga Chitta is exactly the same, no difference. Cannot accumulate, cannot change in nature. So certain ones have a specific name because of a particular function, but the actual chitta is exactly the same in strength, intensity, object.
But say
Difference is the function.
yeah, but all the accumulation committed by these chittas, Javana chittas, yeah, they have to somehow transform past the information, to a next chitta, okay. And then if it is a next chitta is Bhavanga chitta, how would that sort of newly accumulated Ksala or Aksala can be passed?
Now, we do make a distinction between the chitta arisen and the accumulations that's passed on. I mean, if a kusala arises now, it doesn't mean that the kusala that's been accumulated is somehow defiled or polluted. It's also accumulated and it's being passed on even with the akusala chitta. That's a different function. At that moment, what appears is one thing and what's passed on is something else.
But the latent tendencies in each chitta going on and on also are in the Bhavanga chitta. That is true. The latent tendencies, anusaya. Yeah, anusaya are in the Bhavanga chittas also. Every chitta in life.
Let me just explain to some of the newcomers. So the latent tendencies, for example, the tendency to anger or the tendency to attachment, it doesn't arise at every moment. Like now there's no anger, but it hasn't been eradicated. If there is a cause, if someone comes in and starts shouting, maybe immediately there's anger. So these tendencies which haven't been eradicated, they lie dormant in each chitta, so they're carried on from each chitta throughout life, and they condition the attachment or the aversion when those conditions are in place. This is what they're talking about.
And what's passed on is changing every time with each chitta.
Yeah, so including Bhavanga chitta.
Yes.
Then
Use a microphone.
after content, the Bhavanga chitta would change, no?
No, it's manifestation, not
manifestation.
Not manifestation. Bhavanga chitta still has the same characteristic, function, manifestation.
Being able to newly accumulated tendency to following chitta, despite the fact it's just a Bhavanga
to accumulate and pass on. That's one function of chitta.
So are the kusala chittas and kusala chittas of these moments? Where are they?
I cannot say where they are.
They are gone.
Yeah.
But the accumulation is in each chitta.
Yeah.
Each.
Like the memory, like the memory that arose a moment ago is gone, but it is accumulated in the chitta, so it can arise and remember that this is Azita or this is Sukhin any time. because that tendency is accumulated.
Memory is a very difficult subject to explain. Sanya, yeah? For instance, and the Buddha recalls all the details of his previous lives before his attainment of enlightenment, yeah? 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 And where that kind of memory come from is the question I often have. Is it accumulated, is it stored in his Bhavanga Citta or Jhana Citta? Or where are these details stored?
It was stored even in moments of ignorance before his enlightenment. It's in all citta, not lost, never lost.
Otherwise, how can panya develop? And how can people have different inclination? Only Buddha knew what are there in any moment of citta.
I have, today I'd like to ask just one question here, that the function of kusala and aksara citta, which take place at the sense doors, and the function of the kusala and aksara citta, which take place at the mind door. Yeah? And my question here is, when we compare these two types of kusala aksara cittas, what's the difference? More specific, I'd like to know whether kusala and aksara citta, which take place at the five sense doors, have any karmic power or not.
What do you
means
mean by
that they can produce result or not.
He wants to know whether the, for example, understanding which can arise in the sense door process, whether it can be kamapata.
Yeah. Today, have you did any karma?
Yeah.
What karma?
Just helping other people.
Yes, at the table you
Yeah,
have a
the
lot.
best. I think that was a good deed.
And what? Yeah. And
Lucky you put your computer away.
and what about the akusala cittas?
A lot.
See, they are in citta.
Yeah, but the point is, say, no, Jhavana cittas, which take place at sense doors, have any power to produce, to commit ksara and aksara kamapada or not?
Let me ask you, does the akusala or kusala at the mind door, just one process, does that have a power to condition?
I don't know whether it's just one process or processes. They are associated. They can be associated with kamapata. It's very clear.
Well, I think kamapata, what we learn about kamapata is deeds done through body, speech, and mind, which require a lot of conditions. It's not just a arising of akusala. One moment of akusala, one process of akusala.
The point is, ksara and ksara and aksara cittas are the sense door. It's why such, no, to be very simple, to simplest term, we experience our vipaka, we result through the sense doors. Then we create some kind of commit good deeds or bad deeds through the mind door. That's the simplest way to explain cause and result, yeah? Then why do the vipaka, ksara and aksara cittas take place at the sense doors, which I do not understand at all?
At moment of knowing that this is a cup, is it kusala karma or akusala karma or what?
To that extent, it's quite easy to understand because
it is only kilesa.
Because kusala and aksara take place even at the sense door because our deeply rooted sort of defilements.
Can that moment produce result as
I would
karma?
say no.
So it's no.
Okay, that's all. Okay. Good.
I think the question actually he had when we were talking on the van is because I said that even though in daily life we can say no, that the kusala and akusala kamapata is through the mind door, not through the sense door, but we cannot say impossible, because what about, for example, the anagami who has almost no attachment left? What about the understanding even in the sense door?
We just talk about whether it can produce results. So at moment of akusala, at moment of knowing or taking this for a cup, it doesn't bring any result.
That's clear. But we cannot say that under no circumstances in the sense door process there cannot be kamapata, because depend on who and what and when, like the understanding of the anagami that arises in sense door process.
But there are many degrees of akusala, anusaya, and asava, and so on. So it depends on citta at that moment, whether it is the degree of being able to produce result or not.
And also we know that a moment of right understanding arises with many other more unwholesome, more chetasikas than unwholesome. So for anagami, it must be quite strong.
Very strong. Yeah. So we cannot just say never can there be kusala or akusala kamapata in the mind doors.
So joy and courage? No, with akusala it's not. Only with kusala.
Joyous. I'm very happy.
With akusala?
No, it's with kusala, but it's courageous, I know. But I think not associated with the meaning of joyfulness.
Cheerful.
That Thai word, ra re. When there's understanding of the truth.
But like you often remind us, lopa is around the corner.
Around the corner. Always. Always.
And because it's your last session, anything else you would like to ask about Helena and Ian? Last chance? Ian?
Just so we cannot be last chance.
Okay, let's ask Ian. Yeah. And I'd like to know how you have found the discussions, Ian, because it's your first time coming here.
First of all, I hope the question raised or the comments I made didn't arouse any akusala feeling from anybody at all. If I do, I apologize.
No expectation, but
I
appreciate you.
Yeah, but I found it very interesting. I learned a few things. Most importantly, the latest impact obviously is the sati. Obviously, I go down to the wrong track, like John said. But yes, there's some findings. And at first, when I heard about this, I thought it's all intellectual discussion, right? It's just talks. So I was wondering, what can you achieve from that by so doing? But it seems there's something can be done even by talking, right? And it's just, say for example, you have to listen first to understand, then hopefully understand. If you don't even have a chance to listen to some of the things being mentioned, at least for the past day or so, then I probably won't be able to understand some part of it. So there's definitely plus. But I still have doubts. Doubt meaning by merely sort of listening and discussing, and like I mentioned to John this morning, you can sort of read all the swimming manuals, things like that, everything. But if if you never practice throw into the deep water, I presume you drown right away. That's my own understanding. Okay.
What's the best moment in one's life? What is the best moment? Best moment in one's life.
In oneself.
In one's life.
In one's life.
Yes.
I mean, for me, it's understanding the truth.
Yes.
Right. That's what keeps seeking.
And how can there be the understanding of the truth?
How can there be the understanding of the truth? How can there be understanding?
Like I said, first of all, you listening, but then again, you put it the way that if you don't have the past karma, then even you listen, you might not have the chance to listen. If you listen, you won't be able to understand. So that is the.
That's not meant to discourage anyone. I mean, it's just a statement of fact to emphasize the importance of understanding leading to more understanding. It's not something else that will lead to understanding, but it is understanding that will lead to more understanding.
I think the point Ian's trying to make is that the factor is hearing the truth, and I made the comment that it's not something to be done, right? And we discussed that one cannot decide to hear the truth. It is one's good fortune if the circumstances are there.
Yeah,
It's good result of past karma.
Probably you are soon closing this discussion here. So I'd like to go back to his original question, yeah? Because you're talking about practicing meditation, yeah? A statement which I like, which I learned from Kunsuchin, that is, if a given teaching promotes any, even 1% of attachment, yeah, it is not Buddhism. Now, Buddhism promotes 100% detachment. You see? So if somebody, if a given teacher said that there is such and such benefits, yeah, in training or teaching, it's not Dhamma, I think. Yeah? We are not doing something for the sake of benefits or gaining, for the total renunciation, 100% detachment. Yeah?
But the knowledge you gain is benefit, right? So we're talking about benefit in sense.
Advantage. There are advantages in developing
in absolute sense, no advantage, no benefit. Total detachment.
Because of no understanding from following any pattern at all, it has to be the Buddha's word which condition the understanding of whatever appears, which is unknown from life to life. Like seeing is not self, it's conditioned. It arises and falls away instantly. From nothing to see and then nothing again. Each reality is that, but they're all unknown until one hears the teachings of the Buddhas which talk about the truth of each moment. To understand that actually each reality which appears is conditioned. No one can let it arise at all.
Coming back to the question, your statement, understanding is scary. If we take everything for non-self, it's scary. But the statement I like of Kunsuchin is everything is dark, everything is element. Yeah? Everything is element. Yeah? And it's a very strong statement. It's here, but it's just element.
Actually, it's what the Buddha taught, that
Yeah,
not everything is element.
Yeah, but it's a very scary statement, but it's true, 100%.
Why is it scary?
It's just element, nothing.
Just elements, yeah.
It's scary statement, but
It's only the because of attachment that it seems scary.
It's to self that's scary. It's not to Banya.
I would like to say a statement to Tara. And the Tara had a question about the Panchatavan Wiki. I would like to say that if you think about the Paramanapachaya, in the Panchatavan Wiki is the Paramata Dhamma. It's a rupa. It's a real. It's not a concept. That's why in the Panchatavan Wiki is the Paramata Paramana. It means the rupa. Rupa is a Paramata.
And now, can you explain to these two who don't know any of the words, can you explain what you're talking about? Because it just sounds, it doesn't mean anything. Can you give them a simple explanation, please?
I try to tell a statement to the Tara that they talk about the Panchatavan Wiki and the further Panchatavan Wiki and
No, use a convention word, easier, not Palitam.
No, the Panchatavan Wiki is the...
It's a Palitam! It's a Palitam! Use English sounds.
Sense door.
Yeah, okay.
Five sense door. Five sense door. Five sense doors mean that the Aramana is the Paramata. It's a Dhatu. It's a rupa. It's not a concept.
No, it's English.
Object. Object is not Aramana. Object.
Object is a rupa. Yeah. It's not a concept.
Yeah.
It's not a concept.
It's not a concept.
Yeah.
In the five senses. Yeah.
Five senses is Shakupasana. I went to Mexico. Talk to the Tara.
They could start talking in Cantonese.
Exactly.
Now could start speaking in Japanese.
Another thing that I would like to step into the Dhammas about the lining that you talk about that one. That you're seeing. Right? When you're seeing it means the visible object imaged in the eye base of Jatupasada. That is condition Jatuvinyana. Sorry about that. I think another thing that when they talk about the Shifu, I think about like to say to Sadao, if you understand the stick some posho. No, sorry. We did some posho. You understand that what you mean by the Shifu.
Well, it's apparent his daily life language and our daily life language is different.
It's a skill to express oneself in a language that others can understand, and this is kind of consideration and yeah, they could start having a German conversation.
Yeah. Well, Gaby and I were talking how difficult to explain the Dhamma in your own language. Then we go to English. English is easier for us, but sometimes we have to explain in Dutch and we use some translations, but it sounds so awkward, so strange. Nicht geläufig. Yeah, not common language. So we talked about our troubles yesterday.
So what Kunnokudan is expecting that is that everyone at least knows Pali.
But even no, but we're pointing out we have many.
Oh yeah.
But he knows that the people who are newcomers who don't know any Pali terms, so out of metta and kindness, and we try to use words that can be understood easily, and it's a good test of one's own understanding, because if one cannot put that understanding in simple words, then it's of no value at all.
And you'll be training in English.
The first trip when we went to Vietnam a few years ago, the first trip, for almost the whole stay we didn't use any Pali terms, maybe one or two, and we have our discussions in Australia, we don't use any Pali terms because people just find it off-putting. So the aim is to help people listen and consider, not to impress with our knowledge or something like this. And Gabby, any points or you'd like to bring up? Or? We had one conversation when we first met you about the environment. Many people have concerns about environmental issues, for example, the amount of pesticides that's used, or climate warming, or the kind of drugs that are used in hospitals, all these things. And we were talking about how the only problem actually is the thinking at this moment, the thinking with akusala, and if there's no thinking of akusala, no problem, no issue, but it doesn't mean one cannot think about or have ideas, because this is daily life as well. Anything more to add on this thing?
Our realities right now. Right now? Are they know? No. So what Buddha taught us is just to know what is here and now, instead of trying to have something which hasn't arisen yet and try to have it. But that which is there here and now should be known, because it's covered from years and years ago until Buddha taught us.
And all problems arises because there's no knowing, there's so much ignorance. So the only cure is to understand.
That's why having clear understanding of one word at a time is very important.
So to clarify, when we're thinking about the environment or things like that, or how good Donald Trump is, we're kind of moving away from the reality of the present moment, which is the most important.
That's why I understand each reality at a time, but thinking is not seeing. And it's conditioned by previous accumulation. Nothing and then something and then nothing should be kept in the mind.
When we think, we tend to be absorbed in the object of thinking, but it's more important to begin to understand that thinking as a conditioned moment. That's to get away, we're coming out of the being absorbed in the object.
the problem is the ignorance and attachment. What you refer to absorb is because ignorance and attachment has arisen. So it's ultimately to seeing the danger of ignorance attachment.
And to understand intellectual is not enough, because the truth can be directly attained to understand the truth.
But one must have intellectual understanding before there can be direct understanding. Otherwise, one will easily be led to the idea of self doing something to have more understanding.
If there is no understanding of awareness or some sati, it's impossible to try to have it.
It's impossible.
You try to have it arise. Try to have samasati right now. Is it possible? So it depends on understanding the anattas of all dhammas.
You can be trying, but it's wrong and it won't bring awareness.
Or subtle trying.
Any kind of trying.
Yeah.
Can never bring it.
And only the right understanding can understand that it's wrong.
What Nina is saying is that while we are talking about the trying of so-called meditators who make a plan to go somewhere and focus on some object, there's also the trying that can happen with those who don't meditate, like trying to catch realities, trying to understand.
Be aware now. Be aware now. It can slip in. It can slip in. We talked yesterday about awareness can slip in. We can take it the wrong way or the right way. So if you take it the right way, you know it's all the right conditions. But the wrong way, you expect something. So everything can be taken the right or the wrong way. So be so careful to write or to explain to others.
Well, that's why there has to be so much careful considering and reflecting and understanding of dhammas as anatta. Otherwise, no matter one says, be aware now or understand reality, it can be taken the wrong way. Attachment and the idea of self and expectations, trying to pinpoint, trying to know it. So the problem is not the words, but the misunderstanding and the attachment, especially the attachment to the idea of self. Yes. So however the words are put, there can be misunderstanding because of that accumulated tendency and accumulated memory.
Until there is more confidence on anattaness. This time.
I think it's been a long session and you must be tired.
No.
So we'll see you tomorrow at 9
Yes,
o'clock.
yes.